In retirement, many people think about giving money to their children. On today's episode of Friends Talk Financial Planning, we're going to talk about the 4 mistakes you need to avoid when giving money to kids. Hi, I'm John Shear, and I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. Before we get into the 4 mistakes that people make when giving money to kids, please subscribe. Helps other people find us on YouTube and keeps us going. All right, John, let's talk about mistake number 1, and that is giving too much money away. So, what do you have to say on this one?
Yeah, well, and as we're doing the introduction, it caught my ear that I said, "Oh, giving money to our kids." We're talking about kids that are in their 50s or 60s or some other right. It's not, so we're not talking about the minors here, right? Typically, it's hey, once
Right.
if I'm at the stage where I've kind of won the game and I want to start giving money, it's to my adult children that they're approaching
Right.
retirement, sort of thing, right? And that's kind of the basis of things is giving, don't give money that you can't afford. Sometimes people
Right.
feel like, oh, one of my goals is to give money, and cutting into my own saving and spending even to give to the kids. And of course, what somebody wants to do with their money is their choice. But I think you really got to look closely at, all right, what is my number, so to speak, right? How much do I need to support my lifestyle? And then when I have money above that, that's the place where, as I see it, is really giving to the kids come in. But just be very careful before you think, oh, I want to put giving money to the kids first, to the kids or grandkids, and then and putting my own financial security at risk. So just in looking at that first and starting with the end in mind is that first mistake I see people make. What do
Yeah.
you yeah.
I also think that we should say when it usually, like ages that it's usually appropriate. So, in general, when people feel first retire, they just want to conserve their cash, right? And so, this we really talk about when you have more than you can conceivably spend, is when this comes up. And it's usually 75 ish, 80, probably, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like
no, I
80
think that's
later,
right.
yeah. Yeah, so I
And
think that's, giving people, and it's not that I've never seen younger people do it, certainly, and that's great. Because, but it's usually people that have accumulated quite a bit of wealth in that situation, that
right.
they really are confident that they can do it. So yeah, so I think that helps. Most times it's older people, but sometimes it is younger or early retirees, but that's an unusual situation when they've really been able to acquire quite a bit of wealth. Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like when you first start retirement, it's okay, geez, I think all this money's going to last, but I'm not really sure. Is it going to last for me? And then you start to get to an age where you go, yeah, I think this is going to. And then it's like, yep, this stuff's going to last. And that's when we typically like that sort of a progression, right? Different for everybody, but that sort of timeline is how I see it
And
anyway.
another
So,
thing that when you're that age, I kind of have an idea of how much are you comfortable with keeping in your nest egg, and
yeah, right.
then what's above that. So that helps with market ups and downs.
Yeah,
Like so then you can say, okay, I want to have 2 million or 4 million or whatever number it is. And then whatever's above that is what's game for so you keep the amount that you're going to need, to your
yeah.
point earlier.
Yeah.
But
And
just set
so
a number.
let's assume that everybody, all right, we're giving money that we don't need, right? Like we've achieved
Right.
that, we've avoided that first mistake, and okay, now we got money to give. What other mistakes do we need to avoid here? And one of the
I
ones that
think
I think about is sort of being equal in my giving to family members, right?
right.
Um, so what, and I'll just say that my take, there can be different needs. Somebody, hey, we've got one of my kids was a school teacher and one was a corporate lawyer and made millions of dollars a year, sort of thing. You go, geez, the one has a bigger financial need, right? It could be fair to give unequally, but
Right.
my contention is that even if it's fair, that can cause some hard feelings. But I've never seen when people give equally to their kids that equally, almost never. I've never had it where there's been hard feelings. Fair, even though it's not wrong, can cause hard feelings. So I think you got to really think closely about
Yeah,
that.
I agree. If the child who's more well off comes to you and says, "Stop giving me money," that's the point where you know you don't have a problem.
Right,
If you
right.
ask them, you're creating a weird dynamic. Like, would you mind if I give money to your sibling? Like, they might feel obligated to say it's fine,
Yeah,
but if they proactively come to you and say, "Hey, you know what, I don't need this, what are you doing? Give it to charity, give it to some, use it some other way," then you definitely don't have to worry about this. But
yeah.
I think it just really is something to be very cautious about if you're considering giving unequally.
Yeah, yeah. Think closely. It sounds good, right? And I tend to fall on the fair side. Like it makes sense to me
Yeah,
if I've got more that my sibling should get more, right? But that can cause problems. So
yeah.
um, the
All
the other
right, number
yeah, the other
three.
thing I had on my list was don't mistakes are waiting till the end of life to
Yeah,
give. When I've got more, it's going to go to the kids. Don't wait to the end of life, right?
right. And there's a few different nuances to this. First of all, for their benefit, if they're going to get a decent amount of money, it can help them to learn how the skills that you need to deal with it.
Yeah,
Like, so it's, if you get a bunch of money, let's say you get a bunch of money and you use it to buy a house. Okay, there's a lot of things to you have to learn when you have a house.
yeah, yeah,
And so they it gets them used to learning the skills rather than getting a larger amount all later. It helps them learn skills.
yeah. One of the phrases that we use is um, let kids make their mistakes on smaller amounts of money so that
Right.
when they inherit later on, they've got experience with it, right? I mean, you're going to
Oh,
make mistakes, but rather have it be on with $10,000 than $100,000 sort of thing, right?
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And but then there's also a practical situation about waiting until the end of your life too, and that is from a tax perspective. If you have individual stocks or individual mutual funds, when you die, your kids gets what is called a step up in basis, and so they won't pay capital gains on those stocks, etc. If you give it to them during their lifetime, during your lifetime, then they don't get that step up in basis, and they'll end up paying more taxes. So while you don't want to give them that particular thing. That's kind of a sub mistake.
yeah, yeah, and we see that with giving stock. Hey, the stock has gone up, right? I put in 1,000, now it's worth 100,000. Geez, I want to give it to you, Bridget. So my daughter has it. You go now when you sell it, you have to pay capital gains taxes. If I hold it and I die and you get it, you have no taxes, right? And the same thing happens with houses. We'll see. Oh, I'm going to put the house in the kid's name. Then they don't have that step up in basis, right? And it can be a really big tax problem. So before you gift something that's gone up in value, especially houses and stocks, those are things we see, be really, really careful on that, right?
I would say that I have one client who inherited or was gifted some Apple stock. And I think that's what the giftee had, because it had such a big run. And
Yeah,
so, she was happy to get it. It's not like people are going to be unhappy, but if you're trying to be strategic about it, the giftee might not have had the equal amount of money, cash sitting around. That's what I
right.
suspect.
But when you have a
So it's
choice,
not
yeah,
like the person was, she really appreciated the money. So
yeah,
it's not like don't do it, but just realize that if you've got a choice, if it's you don't want to do it on your deathbed for sure.
yeah. The other thing about the logistical side of not waiting is if you think about, if I've got enough money and you just kind of described, you get to be in your late 70s, 80, into your 80s. How old are your kids at that time? They're
Yeah.
in their what, 50s, 60s sort of thing. I think the average age that somebody inherits in the US is 63, right? By that time, they're already, well on their way, if not into retirement. And even though it's great getting money at that stage, right, it's less impactful when if you give earlier when they still got kids at home or those sorts of things. I had a friend who was trying to figure out if he could afford to remodel his kitchen. He loved the house, but the kitchen, and his folks gave him some money. He was able to remodel the kitchen, super valuable in his 40s. If they had
Right.
waited until, he's in his 60s before they inherited, it'd been like, well, that's nice, but I would have rather, it would have been really useful earlier, right? So the older your kids get, the less useful it can be. So just from a practical standpoint, it's more impact. Plus, you get to see it if you give it to them. If they inherit it, you don't get to see them, you know, remodel their kitchen or whatever it is that's important to them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The last point is related to that, and that is don't have expectations. Like, so if you expect them to remodel their kitchen and really love it, and you to go over and have breakfast every day in their kitchen, you might be disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you might even be I've known more than one person who received a lot of money from their parents when they were young people in their 20s, and it was weird. First of all, they didn't really want it. They really just wanted to be regular 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then they had to deal with it. So they've got to deal with this whole throng of investment advisors and all that. And I'm sure the parents thought it was, a great thing. But, in this particular cases, they were not that into
Right.
it just created a lot more responsibility. It's like when I don't know if I'm a fan of the Antiques Roadshow, and
Yeah.
sometimes somebody will bring in a painting they think is worth $3,000 and it's worth $500,000.
Yeah.
And once in a while, their reaction is like, "Oh no, now I have to deal with this." Like
Right.
I
Right.
just had it on my wall in my unsecure house when I thought it was worth $3,000, but now I need a security system, and what about who
Right.
inherits this, and like all kinds of different problems come up, and that's kind of their reaction. Is like, I just want to be a regular. I just want to be a regular person. So
Yeah. I love
that's
that.
why don't expect anything.
Give for the sake of giving, not because of what
Yeah,
it's going to get you in whatever fashion that is,
right.
right? Totally great. Well, hey, I think it's a great place to wrap things up. Again, I'm John Shear. I run a fee-only financial planning practice in Middleton, Wisconsin.
And I'm Bridget Sullivan Ramon. I've got a fee-only financial planning practice in Chicago, Illinois. John and I are both accepting new clients, but if you're looking for an advisor in your local area, you can check out acplanners.org. That's the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners, and we belong to it, love it. And there's a lot of like-minded advisors there.
And don't forget, hit that subscribe button.